Today we're going to talk about the two things that you need in order to be successful as a buyer in a competitive market. Let's get into it. Hey guys, I'm Walker Dybel, author of Buy Then Build and creator of the Acquisition Lab. When you are looking for a business to acquire to buy, a lot of times, a lot of the easiest deal flow really comes from just reaching out to brokers. It's a one-to-many strategy. It's a way to get a lot of deal flow quickly from sellers who are ready to transact and typically have a pretty clear number in mind. So it's a great way to get deal flow and to buy a business quickly. But one of the downsides of working with listings that come from brokers is that there tends to be a lot more buyer competition because there's something that's sort of on the block that's up for sale that is potentially getting traffic. And if that broker is doing their job right, then there's going to be other buyers than you. And so what are the things that we can have as a buyer in order to not only fit in as someone who's competent, but also stand out as the person that is able to acquire this business? And it really comes down to confidence and speed to closing. Let me tell you a story of the absolute worst buyer that I've worked with. So I'm gonna put on my broker hat for a minute. I was talking with a seller recently who asked me how many deals I've done in my broker role, which was, I came up with 60. I've done 60 of these. And so the thing is this is the worst buyer that I've ever experienced. And you might think that it's the buyer that put our listing under offer and then went on a cruise, didn't buy the internet package, didn't even tell us, and just disappeared. That's pretty bad. But that's not it. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's someone who came at us with a very high level of integrity and urgency and wanted to get this deal done. And then what happened was he sort of drug the seller through the mud, drug me through the mud, drug the lender through the mud, and just was like really demanding. Had multiple email lists going on all at the same time, email chains going on at the same time through diligence and all the rest of it. And he was hyper. He seemed to be working with a sense of urgency, but then about halfway through, he started becoming sort of emotionally volatile, which was fine. I was able to manage it. And anytime he would sort of like lose the sort of reasoning or what he was trying to do, I was able to kind of help him and talk him through it. And please don't think that I'm here to sell somebody a business that they don't want or need, but rather he seemed to be losing the confidence of wanting to close on this specific deal. And so he had put in an LOI and intending to buy a company, and then halfway along the way, with no new information, okay, some things came into focus, but there was nothing new that was delivered. He was able to freak himself out and overthink a lot of little things that was tripping him up. And so I was able to talk him through a lot of these things. Ultimately, closing got delayed by a week. And with about 4 days to closing on the new date, he called up and said that he had told his employer way back at the original LOI that he had put in an LOI and was intending to buy a business. I'm certainly not going to tell you to not tell your employer, but in my experience, that was a bit odd. Most people don't say, hey, employer, I'm going to go buy a company, because what that is a conflict of interest with the employer, because they're thinking that you're going to leave or that you've got other interests, and they're sort of losing their control as an employer, right? So 4 days to go, the buyer calls me up and says, Walker, my employer just came in and said there's a conflict of interest and I can't close on the deal. I said, okay, what are you going to do? And he said, I'm going to stick with my employer. And I said, but you're buying a business. What, like, it generates millions, okay, in revenue and 7 figures in earnings. Like, why are you? And he just couldn't do it. And so the thing was this was an external, out of everyone's control sort of thing. And the thing is that he waited up until the bitter end in order to do it. When you put in an LOI, a letter of intent, in order to buy a company, you're basically asking someone to be engaged to get married, okay? So for you to sort of take that seller, make them sign an exclusivity period with you, run them through the dirt, and then ultimately at the end of the day, not have confidence in what you're doing, it's a huge waste of everybody's time. I can tell you that this was not the first time this buyer had done it. I had figured that out, and now I know multiple lenders that will not work with this particular individual. I know over a dozen brokers that refuse to work with this individual because he is the massive time waster and someone who will tie up sellers for like 60 to 90 days, which is not okay. So it comes down to, how do we get confidence and speed to closing, right? And what I want to say is the thing that made this particular buyer the worst ever was that he was high maintenance, which is fine in and of itself, assuming you're going to close, which he's not, okay? The thing was he came in with confidence and speed. Because he had already worked with a deal, he sold me on the fact that the other deal didn't close because of the other seller's, issues, okay? And something popped up. That it turns out that's questionable if it's true or not. In fact, most are telling me, the most that were involved, were sort of hinting at the opposite. Doesn't matter. The point is that the bank that he was working with was about to close on a deal, and so that bank was already much farther along with that individual, which gave him an edge in terms of being able to close, in terms of speed to closing, okay? He was able to actually get a loan faster than any other buyer that was buying with a loan, okay? Second, there was 2 offers on the table plus his, okay? I don't want to get into the numbers, so let me make them up. Let's just say it was, $4.5 million. One offer was $4.5 million. Second offer was $4.5 million. This guy came in and said, I don't want this to go into the weekend. I want this business. This is what I want to do with my life. I'm gonna offer 4.7, but only if he signs today, because I cannot live with going into the weekend. I gotta have it. So he had speed to closing. He was passionate. He worked with a sense of urgency, and he made very clear that this is what he wanted, and he was willing to pay for it, okay? To make matters interesting, once he got emotionally volatile, he then asked for a seller note on the $200,000, but that's neither here nor there. He sort of started changing the deal. So how do we get confidence and speed of closing? Confidence. 4 things. 1, have your finances in order. All right, get your personal financial statement in order. Meet with banks. Okay, understand what you can afford. And understand that there's going to be a lot of paperwork to get you to closing that you need to be ready for in terms to execute, okay? 2, be certain on what you're looking for, okay? No one likes a tire kicker, all right? And the thing is that like ultimately you want to be able to make a decision on a real yes, a real no, or a real next steps quickly and at every step in the process, okay? If it's not going to work for you, kill it fast, stop wasting everybody's time, don't make a bad name for yourself, okay? Number 3, be confident in the acquisition entrepreneurship business model, okay? So understand that you're using leverage in order to buy these companies so that you can get the equity buildup. Understand that you're buying a business that's gonna have a cash flow that should generate about, let's just say 20 to 35% cash on cash return coming out of the gate on the first day, okay? Third is you're buying a business which has a higher appreciation value than say a building, which is going to grow at 2-3% a year in appreciation value. This is a business. This is something you can put your back into. This is active investing, a company that you can lead and grow to a new net worth beyond what it is today. Okay. Number 4, the magic is not in the de-risking of the asset. Okay, the magic is in your ability to grow it, your ability to transform it, your ability to deliver value to the customers, your ability to deliver value to the employees, and your ability to create something absolutely awesome. This is simply a stepping stone. It's getting on base in your startup, okay? It's addressing the revenue, it's addressing the cash flow, it's addressing the infrastructure, it's addressing the customers first. Then you get to iterate from there, okay? Be confident in the model. The magic is not in the de-risking. Do not try during diligence to de-risk the whole darn business, because there's no way to do it. There's no perfect business out there, okay? Don't freak yourself out like our buyer example, like our buyer case study. Make quick decisions confidently. So this is that real yes, real no, real next steps, okay? So the thing is that we're always looking for real yes, real no, real next steps. What we had with our case study buyer was let's pretend. And he played let's pretend with everybody for a long time. He did it a couple of times, and now his name is mud. He can't work with anybody, okay? Don't be that guy. And all of these things together allow you to make confident and quick decisions, which allow you to work with speed, okay? So be decisive for speed. Be decisive, be passionate about what it is that you're acquiring and why. Work with urgency. over communicate to the broker, over communicate to the seller, okay? Over communicate every step of the way, okay? Be transparent, work with urgency, and finally, the big thing to having speed to closing is having your money lined up. Whether that be an SBA loan where you need to go out and get pre-qualified, whether that be with, I'm going to take a loan on equities that I have or other real estate that I have, get it lined up ahead of time. If you are doing a search fund then be a real search fund and have all of your investors ready to go. If you're an independent sponsor, have proof of those backers ready to back you in that acquisition, okay? Because ultimately, when you work with brokers, there's always going to be competition, especially for good or great businesses, okay? Having speed and confidence to closing is the best thing that you have to not only fit in as a competent buyer, but stand out as the one that should buy this company and lead it as CEO. Listen, if you want to buy a business in the next 12 months, I've spent 17 years acquiring companies. I've bought $16.5 million in revenue across 7 companies over 10 years. I've helped dozens of entrepreneurs exit. I've sold my own companies. I've bought my own companies. I've brokered companies. I've been licensed by the SEC, whatever. The point is that we created the Acquisition Lab to be a world-class program for you to be able to learn, work with a vetted cohort of people, get access to a suite of tools, and have a live coaching program for 12 months that allows you access to me and my team of advisors at the Acquisition Lab to work with you in a do-it-with-you program to help you find and buy a business on your terms. I'm Walker Dybel. Thanks a lot. Looking forward to your application at theacquisitionlab.com. Bye.